friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 16 of my 2019 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Avery Elle's Santa Bear stamp set. So I have stamped out my images on some Nina Solar White cardstock with Memento Tuxedo black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm going to start with my bear, and for him I'm using E40, E41, E43, and E44. As much as I would have loved to turn him into a polar bear, I did just recently do a few polar bears on a card, so I thought it would be something fun and different to just do a classic brown bear. So I'm starting with that E44 and laying in my shadows, just anywhere that the sun wouldn't hit towards the bottom edge of his body, and also where there would be any cast shadow, like from the brim of his hat or where his arm is kind of over the, his belly and stuff like that, where the bunny is sitting on his lap. Then I'm going to come in with the E43 and begin to blend that out, just making sure to really go over the edge of that E44 and soften it, because that E44 is quite a bit darker than the E41, so I really want to make good use of that E43 to help transition into the lighter two shades. Also, because he is a larger image, if you wanted to, you could break him up into parts. So you could color his body separately and then do his head after that, just to help with that blend so your ink isn't drying out too quickly. I decided to tackle him in one go, but I went over him real quick. And I also did a double layer on all of my images today. I'm not going to show it in the video just for the sake of time, but just know that I did go over all of my images twice. So once I have that E43 blended in, I'm going to take the E41. That's actually going to be my highlight shade for his body. So the only thing that I'm using that E40 for is going to be that little area around his nose and also on his belly. So I'm going to take a little of that and then just blend that in, and then I'll also grab the E41 to darken that up and just cast a little shadow towards the bottom where his arm and the bunny are kind of overlapping it. Next I'm going to do the hedgehog and the stump. So for the top part of the stump where the rings are, I'm using E51, E53, and E55. Just doing a little shadow on the back side and then right under his little bum, and then blending out toward the front with the lighter two shades. And then I'm also going to use those colors for the hedgehog's body. So I'm putting that shadow with the E55 real close to his little spikes, and then blending forward because the sun would be hitting mostly on his face, or in this case probably moonlight, because this is going to be a nighttime scene. Then for the rest of the stump and the hedgehog's back, I'm going to use E55, E57, and E59. I'm coming in with the E59 as my darkest and just creating a lot of shadow, especially under the area where the bear is sitting. I'll be pretty heavy-handed there. And then I'm just going to pull that towards the center with the E57. Also add a little bit of darkness to the center part of the stump that has the roots that are kind of splaying out with that E57, and then I'll fill in the middle with the E55, and having that highlight right in the center and the darkness on the edges is really going to help it look more three-dimensional and just lift it off the page. Then for the hedgehog, I'm actually going to go super quick and easy. I'm going to shade him from the bottom to the top. So I'm going to put that E59 towards, the ground that he is standing on, and then blend up about a third of the way. And then I'll come in with the E57 and go a little bit farther, almost another third there. And then I'll grab that E55 to finish him off and just fill in what remains. For the fox, I'm using YR12, YR16, and YR18. I toyed with the idea of turning him into a gray wolf. I thought that would also be something cool to do, but in the end I thought that the bright orange pop of color would just add something to the card. So especially since most of the other critters are pretty neutral. So I'm laying in my shadows with the YR18. As you can probably tell, I'm doing a central light source, so I'm shading the animals in the direction that they're facing. So the shadows are at their backs, and then the highlight is on their faces. And that's going to work really well because I'm going to have the bear on the right-hand side of the card, and all the other critters will be kind of on the left. So that'll be kind of divided right down the center there. So the YR16 was my mid-tone. So I just carefully blended out that YR18 with that. And then I'm going to jump down to the YR12. I could have also used the YR14, but I just thought that the YR12 would just add a little bit of lightness to him that I thought this card needed. I didn't want him to be like super dark. So then I'm going to move on to my bunnies. I'm going to use cool grays for the bunnies. And I'm using C0, C1, and C3. I'm starting out with a little light shading. As you guys probably know if you watch my channel, I love to color bunnies, and I love to give them little dots and details for personality. But before I do that, I usually just do some general shading. That way, once those little dots and details are put in, I don't have to go back and try to shade around them. So for those, I'm using the C3 and C5, and I'm going to do one ear on each of the bunnies in that darker color. I'm going to do the opposite ear, so the one is on the front side and then the other one is on the far side. And then I gave the bunny on the bear's lap a little ring around his eyes and some spots down his back. And then the other one is going to get more of a dark face with just a little white area around his nose, and also a dark front arm and some more dots down his back as well. I kind of just like to play with it. I don't really have a plan in mind ahead of time. I just like to kind of see where the markers take me and have fun with that. For the white parts on the fox, I'm using W00 and W1, a little warm gray there just to differentiate him. And then I'll also use that on the white areas of the Santa Bear's beard and the whites of his hat. And then for the little Bluebird, I'm using B23 and B26, just the two colors because he's super small. But once I did add the B23 in, I did go back with the B26 and just add a little more darkness. For the reds, I'm using R29, R39, and R59. This is my favorite red combo. I usually use a little less of the darker two shades and then have a really nice bright area of red with that R29. But in the pattern paper that I'm going to be using on today's card, the red is actually a much deeper red, so I'm going a little more heavy-handed with those darker two shades and just saving a small area for that R29. And I did accidentally color into the white area, so I'm going to have to fix that with my colorless blender. So if you're not familiar with the colorless blender, it's actually not a blender at all. It is just the pure alcohol. And what it does is push away the other colors. So I'm sorry that my hand is covering it up, but basically what I'm doing is kind of pouncing on that red area and pushing it towards the red hat so that it just kind of bled back into that area. Then I'm using BG11 and BG13 for some of the foliage that's coming off the stump. Then I'm going to take a black Sakura Jelly Roll pen and just dot over the eyes of all the critters to make them nice and bright. And I accidentally smeared a little bit, that's one of the dangers of being left-handed, into the white area of the bird's hat. So what I'll do to fix that is actually grab a white gel pen in just a second, and I'll go over that hat and just clean up that area. I also realized that I forgot to do the insides of the critters' ears and give them some rosy cheeks. So I just grabbed the RV11 and did that super quick. And then I trimmed all of these images out with the matching dies. For my sentiment, I've taken a piece of pattern paper. It's kind of that deep red with a wood grain print on it. And I've popped that into my MISTI, and I'm going to treat that with my EK Success powder tool and then ink up my sentiment using Versamark ink. And that is just a clear sticky ink that works great for embossing. So I'll grab some white embossing powder and coat that sentiment. And I'll do that a couple of times until I think I have really good coverage, and then tap off any excess. And then I'll grab my heat tool and heat that up until the powder is all white and shiny. And I like to heat things from the back first and then come at it from the front. And you can see how that kind of dull powder just transforms into that bright white. Then I'll grab my card base so that I can pop that in my MISTI and stamp on the inside. I'm using Lawn Fawn's speckled eggshell cardstock and stamping with chili pepper ink. It's kind of a deeper red ink. And I just love that little fox image. I had to use him again. So now I've got my pattern papers, and I'm using those from the My Favorite Winter collection from Echo Park. First, I'm going to grab this larger piece that has a little bit of foliage and some berries on it, and I'll adhere that to cover the entire front of the card. And then I've got a navy blue polka dot that looks like snowfall to me. I'm going to adhere that in the center. Then I've got a snowdrift out of white cardstock using the Lawn Fawn Stitch Hillside Borders. And finally, I have the Aeromat die from Avery Elle, and I die cut that out of another piece of the speckled eggshell cardstock. I just thought it would be a nice contrast with the cream against the white snowdrift. And I pop that up on some foam tape, and then I'm going to line that up in the center of my card and press that carefully down into place. I love all the texture that that die gives. Now I can begin adhering down my images, and I'll be using a combination of foam tape and liquid glue. So the liquid glue is going wherever they will overlap that Aeromat frame, and then the foam tape will go down in the center of that window area. So the fox is going up on that snowdrift, so he's just getting adhered flat to the card. And then I have a little foam tape on the hedgehog, so that he can just kind of sit on that mat as well. I just love these little critters so much. I think this is one of the most creatively illustrated stamp sets that I have ever seen. I just love the concept of this so much. This was actually the first Christmas stamp set that I purchased this year, so I'm so excited to get to use it today. The little bird I'm going to have sitting on the tail of the fox. I thought that would be cute, as he wanted to get a good view of Santa as well. I took a Lawn Fawn Everyday Sentiment banner and trimmed down my sentiment, and then I added foam tape to most of it, and I'll add a little liquid glue to the end that will overlap that Aeromat border. So I'm going to adhere that right above the critters' heads. I just thought that would be a cute place. It was kind of a hole there that needed something. So I just lined that up with the inside edge of that Aeromat die. I left that little border. I trimmed it just a little bit so it would be kind of flush with where the design actually starts on it. And you knew I had to add a little bit of stickles to finish off this card. I added it to the bunny's tails and the whites on Santa's hat and the Bluebird's hat. And then I decided to dot a little bit into the background over top of those polka dots that I'm using to represent the snowfall, just so there would be a little extra sparkle and shine. And then I also added it to some of the foliage over on the stump. So that is going to complete my card for today. I'm going to lift that up to the camera so you can see how that stickles catches the light. So gorgeous against that navy blue background. And there is another peek at the inside as well. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Please be sure to hit that thumbs up button if you did, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell if you want to be sure that my videos always end up in your feed. Here's 2 extra videos from previous years of holiday card series that I thought you might also be interested in, so if you'd like to keep watching, you can stick around. I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.